Terry asked me to talk about a time when God showed me very clearly more about the least being the most, and it made me think about the times when I've worked in homelessness. I worked in homelessness for quite a while and met some of the most amazing people that I've ever met in my life, and their impact on me was much more than I would ever have on them. So, some years ago, working in homelessness in Nottingham. Now, I need to talk a little bit about geography here because I'm going to talk about Nottingham, Leicester, and Derby. Nottingham in the East Midlands, right at the heart of the country, one of the furthest places from seeing the sea, which is why I love having moved back to the sea. You've got Nottingham in the north, and then south you've got Leicester. Leicester was where my sister, who's a nurse, still lives. But at the time of the story, she was living and working in Leicester. And then there's Derby. Derby is slightly to the southeast, west. I can never do it. I want to say on the left, but on the west of Nottingham. And it's like a triangle. You've got Nottingham in the north, Leicester down there, and you've got Derby over there. Now, Derby, if you're a football fan, Nottingham Forest and Derby supporters are a little bit like Celtic and Rangers without some of the religious stuff. Nottingham Forest fans don't appreciate Derby County fans. There's lots of very derogatory things said between the two groups. And it was funny because we were at Wednesday study, we were talking about the Samaritans. And it's a bit like Derby is the Samaria of the East Midlands. If you're from Nottingham, I'm sure that if you were in Derby, you'd be saying the same about Nottingham. But it's a Nottingham Forest fan. You wouldn't want to find yourself in Derby. So here's the story. It was my birthday. I had an amazing birthday night. It was a comedy night actually. I had a great time. And my sister took me out, and I used to go out with her and her friends, her nurse friends, and we had a blast. It was a brilliant. I had one or two, as Billy Connolly would say, nippy sweeties, or as Charlene would say, iron brews. I'd had one or two. I'd had a great night. It was time to go home. It was after midnight, and I was getting the last train from Leicester back to Nottingham. Now, because I had had a number of nippy sweeties, I was feeling very tired. And so when I sat down in the train, and these places, Nottingham, Leicester and Derby, they're about 20 minutes, 30 minutes away from each other, so that's how close it all is. I sat down in the chair, and overwhelmed with tiredness / nippy sweetie impact, I fell asleep. Now, sadly, it usually was a direct train, but I happened to find a train that ended up not in Nottingham, but ended up in Derby. So I woke up with the guard saying, "Listen, you need to get out," thinking I was in Nottingham, to look at the sign on the station platform that said, "Welcome to Derby." I didn't have a pile of money, so I couldn't get a taxi home. And I thought, well, I'll sleep on the platform. And the platform had one of those wee huts, the wee rooms, the waiting rooms with all the glass windows. I thought, well, that'll be all right. I'll be warm, I'll be dry. I'll sleep here and get the first train back to Nottingham, which was about 7 o'clock in the morning. So there I was, about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, having had a number of nippy sweeties, very tired, in the station waiting room on the platform. I fell asleep, overwhelmed with tiredness. And I woke up at about 6 o'clock in the morning with two people sat next to me. Two very scruffy, slightly minging homeless people either side of me. Now you can imagine I was a little startled. I woke up thinking, where am I? And I also thought, who are they? And there was one sleeping and one awake. And he said, "Hey up." Now, if you're from the Midlands, "Hey up" is a term of endearment as a welcome. I spent some time in Kent, and we would say "watcher." But in the Midlands, in the East Midlands particularly, we say "hey up." And if you're in the depths of the East Midlands, you go "hey up duck." And I know I don't get that. So this guy says to me, "Hey up." And you may notice that is something that I say when I greet people. It's contagious, I promise you, you'll all be doing it soon. So he goes, "Hey up Graham." I'm like, he knows my name. And then I realised that these two guys were guys that had been living in the night shelter in Nottingham, where I sometimes did shifts. I'm like, "Oh, okay, are you alright guys?" So they both woke up and they started to talk. We started to have a conversation. And I went, what are you two doing here? And they said, "Well, we saw you sleeping and we thought we need to protect you because you were just there on your own. And we've taken it in turns to sleep so that we make sure that we were watching out for you. We didn't want you to get attacked or robbed. It's dangerous." And I thought, well, yeah, it's Derby. And there was that very beautiful moment of two homeless people looking out for me at a time when I was actually quite vulnerable. And they looked out for me all night. I mean, it did cost me breakfast in a local cafe, but but it was an amazing, beautiful moment. And it's a reminder for me constantly not to judge a book by its cover, that we should never underestimate anyone, and that what society sees is not what God sees. And the last thing it reminds us of, don't have too many nippy sweeties and get on a train.